somebody asked me, where do you find your leaders? And I'm like, wow, I find leaders everywhere around me. I could go around my neighborhood and interview 50 people for the first year, but it was about who influenced my heart, what I felt they were doing to influence the world. And so that's what drew me into this. Like, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to understand. I wanted to help myself grow to learn from other people.
Are you confident? Do you have consistency? How much conviction do you have? I'm Daniel Gomez, the Confidence Architect, a business strategist, keynote speaker, executive coach, and best-selling author. On the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, we will help you unlock confidence to create consistency and develop conviction. Together, we will discover the key that unlocks your confidence. Welcome to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show. Today, I am excited, I'm thankful, and I'm grateful all at the same time. I'm just a mix of emotions because I have a great friend of mine today, Miss Melahni Ake. She's an everyday leader. She's actually the leader of Everyday Leader. And what can I say about Melahni? There's so much I could say, but I don't want to rant on. So Melahni, introduce yourself and tell the world who you are, if you don't mind.
Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Thank you for inviting me to be one of your guests. I love this theory and this concept. Daniel Gomez inspires. Isn't this
Hopefully I never expire, but
I'm so tired. Here it is, at the end of the day, and we're just having fun. So me, right? So my concept has always been that I believe every single person can be a leader in your life. And I've practiced this through all the struggles that I have lived with all my life, growing up, losing my father when I was young, to learning about how my grandparents influenced the communities as they were song evangelists. And I used to travel around the country with them, playing sports, being the only girl on a guys hockey league for 12 years growing up was kind of hard, but it was something that I just intentionally, we did. The whole story is really funny, but just continued to do that because I showed up to add value and to learn and was never intimidated. And just doing that as a kid taught me really great lessons to go into my career and my work life to then show up and add value. So one of the first jobs that I had was to work at Disney World because I wanted to understand the concept of excellent customer service. And how did they pull off what they do every day? I had grown up at Disney with my family. And so I learned what to take into the workforce, right? And how to show up and how to serve and have to have that just open-minded giving attitude all the time and how to make things really about somebody else. And so I took that into all of my jobs, got into medical, studied journalism in college. And so I've just used kind of my marketing and servant value attitude all throughout my life. And it has helped me to be successful in everything that I've done. And so a few years ago, I decided that I was turning 50 and that there was a bigger message inside of me that I
Did you say 15?
Yes.
15
yes.
years old?
Yes, 15. Exactly. And it wasn't like at 50, I was going to say, I'm going to go climb a mountain or I'm going to go get a new race car or I'm going to have this kind of an experience or plan this extravagant trip. It was just, wow, I really need to start reflecting on how am I going to show up in the world, right? And so for me, it was more about the people that influenced me when I was born that were 50 years old were my grandparents.
Yes.
And so I started to realize they had such power and impact on me that I needed to show up bigger. I needed to be able to inspire people in a way that they helped me believe in myself when I was really young. And it gave me the confidence and just the self-respect. And again, I go back to belief, but it helped me do everything in my life 100%.
Well, I want to tell you this.
Yes.
You've definitely shown up. I want to interject here. You said something, you wanted to show up in a bigger way. And I love doing these interviews because I learned so much about you. We'll go back to the hockey here in a little bit. I heard that. But you've shown up so much in a big way. And I just want people to really hear what you said, because you said you were turning 50 years old. And at 50,
look at what you have accomplished, Melanie. In the last 2.5 years that I've known you, you've been a trailblazer, and I'm calling you a trailblazer because you are. You've been doing things that people only dreamed or hoped that they could do, and you've done more in the 2.5 years than most people have done in their lifetime. And I love that about you because I don't think you realize how amazing and how far you've come. And I really want to just recognize you for that, because that's what leaders do. They don't look at their age. They don't look at their accomplishments. They don't look at none of that stuff. They don't look at titles. They look at, what can I do to help other people? And you're a servant leader, and you put other people before you. And that's what I love about you. And look at how much God has rewarded you. Just the fact that, man, you're amazing. And I just want to really and you did that later in life. And I want people to know out there that, hey, if you're 45, 50, 55, even 60, think about Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders was 65 years old when he started Kentucky Fried Chicken. So I just want to recognize you for that. But I want to, before this leaves my mind, I want to rewind. You said something that caught my attention, and I didn't want to interrupt you. But did you say you're a hockey player, an only female hockey player as a young girl? Did I hear that right? Tell me about that. I never heard that before.
So this was, a couple of years. My dad passed away when I was 5, and my mother was a nurse. And so here we came back to Indianapolis after he died of lung cancer. And in school back in the 70s, you used to get these little pamphlets, and they were sent home, and they were like the weekly stuff, the activities that were going on. And it said, sign up for hockey. And I hadn't really played any sports up until then, but my mom said, well, why don't we go try it? So we showed up at the rink, and she said, oh, it's ice hockey. And I said, let's do it. Can I do it? And so she's a single parent, right? We were struggling, and it's an expensive sport, but we bought used equipment, and I learned how to skate, and I got on the teams, and the guys treated me with respect. And I learned something that I didn't know how to do, and I became really good. And I was such a cross-trained athlete that at those times, during the 70s and 80s, it's when Arnold Schwarzenegger had his physical fitness patches, and so you would try in your school life, right? So this wasn't a school sport. This was just kind of a club activity in the community. And so when I would go back to school, I excelled in everything: volleyball, basketball, track, and played hockey from October to April every year for 12 years.
I never knew I never knew you were a hockey player. Look at you. I see your beautiful smile. I see the way you carry yourself on your shows and your own podcast. Yes, you have all your teeth. I've known you, like I said, going on 3 years, and this is the first time I ever heard that Melahni Ake was a hockey player. Look at you. What other secrets are you hiding from me?
What's funny is doing that, it was really interesting because as I did it, it just became part of my conditioning. Like, I love to do it. I love to show up on the ice. I have asthma. So I had an inhaler. I'd never let anything stop me, though. Like being on the bench, being in the locker room with all those guys, kids, right? Think about middle school is the toughest time that you go through your life. And I was sharing it on Wednesday nights and Saturdays with a locker room full of crazy boys. Right. But I just did it because I loved it. And so after high school, I didn't play because I didn't go to college. Like back in 1986, when I graduated, there weren't all these girls programs for colleges. But I also didn't just excel because I wasn't in a platform, right? I didn't have the exposure. So I got a volleyball scholarship, but I didn't take that. I went to school for journalism. And so here we are, right, doing a podcast because that's something that I've always loved to do. But in high school, I was a varsity athlete as a sophomore, and created the first girls softball team at our high school. So this is a great story. One of my friends and I, we were challenged. I like challenges.
Not never. Come on.
That I love that.
Before we started, you had your poor husband running wires all over the place. I'm like,
no, but
I'm glad I don't work for you.
So, we said, why can't we have our own softball team? And they said, the school system, well, we can't do that. But if you get 100 signatures and you find a coach, we'll let you have a softball team. So we did. So one of my friends, Kim Sadam, she and I went around, we got 100 signatures. We found a coach. We talked them into it, and they let us start the first girls softball team. So that's pretty cool when I stop and think about that. And I had forgotten that story until just a few years ago. And I thought, wow. And then here's what's interesting. I go to start playing pickleball with my mom. And we run into this guy, and he's telling us this story about how much his daughter has been playing on this softball team at the high school that I went to, and how it's had such an impact on their life of traveling and being able to meet families and be able to experience things with her at that level. And you know, to think about if we had not have taken that step to create something for other people, like at 17, you know, you weren't thinking really of the dynamics of what that would look like, but to feel like you were a part of that story, that was really an incredible like aha moment for me to go, you know, I've always been showing up. I've always wanted to add value. And now when I was turning 50, I just said, why am I just keeping this experience to myself and expecting like an employer to give me kudos or validate me with an annual review that you've added value to the company?
Well,
Right?
that explains it, because that explains how you evolve to create everyday leaders. And it just shows you're adventurous, you're a risk taker.
Oh, yeah.
And it just shows all that. And that's what it takes to be an amazing leader like you are. I mean, I really just like the fact that you're a risk taker. You know, you've had two conferences for your everyday leaders and your group. And I wanna ask you, how did everyday leaders come about? Like, how did the name come about? I love just seeing your mug, right? Because you're something that I love that you did is and people listen to this podcast. You really have to brand yourself, and you really have to get a logo. And it breaks my heart when I see a lot of small businesses, a lot of just people out there, entrepreneurs, and just really trying to make a name for themselves, but they never have that branding. They never have that logo for themselves. They never have that tagline. And your tagline is your brand, everyday leaders. And then what I love about it is you have a mug to go with it. And the other day I was on LinkedIn, and somebody had an everyday leader mug on there. And it's brilliant, because we don't realize that we learn through visualization. A big part of our learning as human beings is we learn from visualizations, and we take in 4 million bytes every single day of just pictures that we take in. 4 million a second. Think about that, a second. And by you doing that, it's amazing. So tell us, how did everyday leaders come about, and how did the mug come into play? That's what I want to know.
Well, it's kind of a team effort. So, you know what, as I was thinking, I was talking to a lot of people just about leadership, and I had joined the John Maxwell team in 2017, and I was turning 50 in 2018. So January 12th was my birthday. And I thought, okay, so 50 and 50 became a significant number because I was turning 50 the second week of January. So to me, logically, I was like, well, I have 50 weeks in my 50th birthday that I didn't design. God designed that. So that's the name, right? That's the 50 and 50, because I'm going to interview 50 people. I'm going to do it after I turn 50. This is going to be really fun, a fun project, right? I'm adventurous. And I said, well, Joe, my husband, we're going to do this podcast, and you're going to help me, right? And so he was like, sure. Sure, we'll do this, because he's an audio god. Like he just gets it. It's easy for him. So as I gave him this project, I said, how are we going to design this? And I really feel like it needs to be around leadership. And I think every single person in the world has a story. And I am a journalist, and I love to connect to people. So I said, what if we called it just everyday leaders? Everyday people sharing their stories of how they believe they're living their life with success. And it was Everyday Leaders 50 and 50. And that's how it just it came about, right? Just the reflection and the creativity of, this is what I really believe people have a story to share with inside of them. And I believe that with all my heart, because I know that my story was so powerful when I started transforming from the corporate environment of what people made me believe about myself into my own story, saying, I'm strong because I've always been strong. I don't let things bother me. I don't let things get me down. I don't have that come over and let's talk about your bad day over coffee. I don't have those days. I just don't have
Yes.
those days.
Well, now that I'm thinking about the name, everyday leader, it's like great leaders show up every day. And I don't want people to get the misconception right now on this podcast, but you're a leader in your home, you're a leader in your marriage, you're a leader in your kids. So everything that we're talking about is every day you have to be showing up in ways that the people around you need you.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to show up as a spouse, whether you're a husband or a wife. You need to show up as a friend or maybe a daughter, or just however it is, showing up. Most businesses fail because people don't show up. They expect just this, I call it the radish effect. A radish grows in 5 weeks and then it dies. And that's the type of results many people are looking for in business. But as a leader in your own business, in your own organization, you have to show up every single day and be consistent. And that's what I love that and I see about you, because every day I see you on Facebook doing your show. Every day I see you, you're always active, and people don't get that. The momentum creates momentum, and a body in motion stays in motion. And that's what I really, really admire about you. So I want to ask you this. What's been one of the hardest challenges in business? Because I really want people to take away some golden nuggets for you that you had to overcome in starting the whole 50 and 50, everything that came up. Because there was a point where you probably felt like frustrated and giving up. And what was that feeling and how did you overcome it?
Well, I think when I started it, I didn't have 50 guests lined up to say, this is what I'm going to do. I just knew that I wanted to be consistent. I wanted every single week. And I knew, somebody asked me, where do you find your leaders? And I'm like, wow, I find leaders everywhere around me. I could go around my neighborhood and interview 50 people for the first year, but it was about who influenced my heart, what I felt they were doing to influence the world. And so that's what drew me into this. Like, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to understand. I wanted to help myself grow, to learn from other people. And so that's really what it was. But I'll tell you, 3 months into the Everyday Leaders 50 and 50 in 2018, my kickoff year, I was eliminated for the very first time from a corporate job. Eliminated, meaning you have no value, is exactly what they told me. I had done so many things for this company, and they told me I had no value, and my position was being eliminated. And it just hit me in the gut, because I was showing up. I am the queen of consistency, and I was showing up every day to add value to that organization. And to
Did they verbally tell you that? Did they verbally say that, or how did they say that to you?
Yep.
Really?
Yes. And so for me, I was just like, wow, what a belief that I knew that it was different, but it's still, it just like sucker punched me in the gut. So I came home. I had to fly home from the company that did that. And I came home and I was just like, what a relief, because for so many of the last 12, 15, 16 months, I had been traveling internationally. I had been giving 1,000%, and always feeling like, when you're in a work environment and you're just trying to prove yourself constantly, and that everything that you're doing is affecting behaviors in the organization in a positive way.
Yeah.
But it's the jealousy, it's the threat, it's the, you're too happy, you see things differently, you're too positive, that's really not where I did fit. Right. And so for me, it was a blessing, because that door was shut. That was in April. So I had started the podcast in January, and in April, I got a big blow as far as from a just financial and a corporate environment in my career. And so what I did do is I had to step back. I had to reflect on, what am I doing? Where am I going? What is my purpose? What do I believe in? And so I connected to a startup organization that really needed me where I was at that time.
So what did you find out about yourself at that moment? What did you learn about? Because I always say, I have a saying when I do some of these corporate trainings, I say to these, when we do these leadership roundtables, I said, every challenge is just showing you who you are inside yourself. The man in the mirror is being revealed at that moment, at that challenge. That man in the mirror, that woman in the mirror is going to come out. So what did you learn about yourself at that moment? Because I will tell you, I think my first instinct, my ego would have gotten in my way, and I would have been like really crushed. If somebody said, "Hey, you're not bringing anything to the table," I don't know how I would respond. I would have gone mad. I mean, I'm just being honest, right? But
well, for me, I was so shocked because I had come into that I had left an organization, first of all, that I had been with for almost 10 years. And I was so comfortable that it took me 3 months to decide to leave that organization to go for this kind of opportunity, right? So, and it was always in my mind that people in that last company had said, "Oh, you're going into corporate America. It's not like a family place anymore. And you're going to go through this cycle, and lots of things happen, and they'll end up firing you. And just the corporate America, like, stay with us. We're a private company. We're always going to take care of each other," which is true. They're a great company, but I had outgrown it. And I didn't want to stay comfortable anymore. I was like, I have to go do something different. So I took this on as a challenge. And I'll tell you, the job after I was there for a year changed incredibly. Like, I wasn't doing the same thing. I was being challenged to go train internationally. I was, given short timelines and deadlines, but I love that. Like, that was my wheelhouse, right? So I performed at my highest level and I loved it. And I think for a lot of people, it would have been like, "Oh, I can't take this constant change. I'm out of here." But I did so many things well, and I was loving it. And so when I was told that I had no value, I thought, I know you're wrong because I've done everything successfully. And so even though the organization was shifting, there's just a lot of people that you don't fit in with, and it's okay. You have to go start what you know. You have to use your skill set and say, okay, well, that's what somebody else believes, but I didn't own that belief. I didn't let that belief come to me and say, well, if that's what you say, then that's what's got to be, right? And now I'm going to be depressed and sad and have to be terrorized about not being able to find my place in society again. I was like, I've got this great podcast. I believe in people. Look at what people are doing. They're encouraging me. They're inspiring me, like Daniel Gomez, right?
Thank you.
And I just saw other people, like, they are struggling and they are figuring it out. I know I can do this. And so with my mentors and with people in my inner circle, I said, here we go. I'm going to just figure this out. So I finished the first year of the podcast. I took on a role with a startup company in medical devices. I got promoted quickly to the VP of sales. We built the organization. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And then I had my first Everyday Leaders 50 and 50 event that I had intentionally planned from the very beginning, the design of this. Have the 50 guests, bring people in to experience a live event, and celebrate what we learned from each other. And so here it goes. Year 2, 50 and 50, right? And the second event happens, and it's even just more designed, better, a full day event, and just incredible people that had so many stories to share that were changing the world. And so that was the theme, right?
Yeah.
So the second year was change the world.
I want the audience to hear this. Is what Melahni just said is when she started this 2 years ago, 50 and 50 was an idea. And many times our heart, our soul is crying out to us with an idea, and we hear the idea loud and clear, and we never take action on that idea. And I want to point out that what Melahni said is within the 50 and 50, she didn't even have 50 guests. She knew she was going to have 50 guests because she turned 50 on her podcast. And where am I going to get the 50 guests? And most people, Melahni, I believe, stop there. They freeze there because the fact that they don't even know 50 people, who can I interview? They're like, they stop there because just that thought is of fear and worry and anxiety comes in, and they stop working towards that dream they had, towards that podcast they had, because they're like, well, who's going to be on my show? But I love what you said, because as you continue to move forward, you had your first event, and then it wasn't exactly what you wanted, but you had an amazing event, right? Any event's an amazing event when it's your first one. The inaugural event, it reminds me of when I had my first event. I was like, well, who's going to come? I was like, well, really, who's going to come? Exactly. And I was scared, and I was just like, man, no, I haven't sold no tickets, and what am I gonna do? But when you said that, it touched my heart, because that was Daniel Gomez here when I had my first conference. And this summer coming up, we're gonna have our Speakers Academy. And if you would have told me 2.5 years ago that, dude, they're gonna be paying over $2,000 to go to your academy, I wouldn't have believed it. But today we had another lady sign up, and it befalls me because I didn't have all the answers. But I want people to hear that Melahni Ake, at 50 years old, didn't have all the answers, but she acted upon her faith. She acted upon her faith and took action. And within that, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, provided those 50 guests. It gave her a conference. And then she learned, what can I improve? And in this past year, she had a full day event that was just amazing. And it all started with an idea that she had. And how many of us have that idea and we never act? And we never move forward because of the fear or whatever it is. So let me ask you this. I want to take a little shift in the interview. Is why do you think most people, you took action, you're doing it, you're living it, you're breathing it. Give me 1 or 2 reasons why you think men or female, just people, have that opportunity and they miss it and they don't ever act upon it. I mean, give us some words of wisdom.
I think it all comes back down to belief. I just think people don't feel like they have the capacity to do anything. Like they've always been told they can't, or they feel like they're in an environment, they're stuck. They have a corporate job. Maybe it's nothing like you got to go start something on your own, but just, have you ever accomplished anything on your own that you can say, I own this idea from start to finish? It wasn't that somebody else put it in my mind. It wasn't that I worked for a family member. It wasn't that I, went and got an accounting degree and I'm an accountant for the rest of my life. That's great. That pays the bills. But what's in your heart? Like for me, it was connecting to people. I have to connect to people. My mom told my husband before we got married, the phone is always going to be with her, right? I'm warning you, this phone, and that's been 29 years ago, right? We didn't have the iPhone. That was just like the little flip.
It was a big old box. Remember the big ones that first came out?
It was. I only dated Joe because he had a phone in his car.
Hey, we're lucky Joe, I'll tell you.
But you know what? But the thing is, I'm a connector, and I had to find my soul connection with people. So everything that I did, Disney, working at a bank, working in tissue transplant, working in fundraising and working in medical. Like my whole presence is I've got to connect to people. I've got to add value. And so as I set my company up a few years ago, it's called Make Connections for Life, because at any stage, right? At any stage, you're going to meet someone. And you have to realize that the way that you build your value, the way that you believe in yourself, the character that you show up as every day, that's going to carry back to what you knew when you were 15 or 16. Like when somebody shared with me, remember we started the softball team at the high school? And I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that. But it wasn't something that was my identity. That was my ego, right? This is how I show up. And so when you're reminded about those things, you say, it does matter. Everything you do today carries through to tomorrow, to 10 years, to 15 years. That's your character. Nobody can take that away from you. Nobody. So you have to show up 100% as your unique self and add value to the world. And you will just authentically connect to where your purpose is going to drive you. You just will. It just happens.
So let me ask you this. Did you ever feel like giving up in your journey of starting, was there a point where you ever said it's just not worth it, or you really, because I did a quote probably a year and a half ago, and I made it into a memes. And for me, there was a tipping point where I went into the bathroom and I literally started crying, right? Tears came down my eyes. And I was 99.9% sure that I was going to give up. I said, you know what? I could go back and get a nice job making over $100,000 a year easily. So when I got back to the house, I had a meme that I made it. It's like, you're not a true entrepreneur till you're 99.9% sure that you're going to give up and you're crying in the bathroom, but you don't. Did you ever have that moment?
Not like that at all. I think what happens to me is when I feel a sense of threat, that's when I get super creative. I just get super creative and I figure out who do I need to connect to that I'm not connected to. And we get out in the basement, we do whiteboard exercises.
Yeah.
For me, it that drives my creativity. It's what can I do next? So one of those things was StreamYard. Last year I felt like, okay, Facebook was controlling all of my content and I really didn't want that to happen. And so I found StreamYard through a friend and I started streaming live interviews and the opportunity to go to many different platforms. So Facebook.
And you're great at it. I love seeing you because you have that bubbly smile and it's like, oh, there's Melahni. She's on live. I love that.
But many people would say, I'm not going to get on video. Are you kidding me? But I thought, how am I going to connect to people deeper, right? I'm traveling or I was in a position where our company closed. So I didn't know what my journey was going to look like. And so for me, it was the creativity. How am I going to connect to people now? I'm not traveling around the world. I'm not doing this. I started a Bible study in October 1st. I started a Bible study intentionally because I needed to connect to people that were going to help me learn about where my journey was going next. And we're still doing that. Next week, it's 7 months. Every single day we've been doing this.
Wow.
And I've grown in totally different capacity than I would have ever dreamed. But I didn't let it stop me because I didn't know what it was going to look like. Right.
Well, you said a key word right there. You said you mentioned the word capacity a couple of times, and I agree with you that I think too many people they don't enlarge the capacity to receive. So give us some tidbits of information, some wisdom of how can somebody expand their capacity that's worked in your life or maybe with a client of yours.
I think for me, sometimes when things happen to us, right? Some things when challenging things happen to us, we always want to look to people that have contributed to forming our life. So whether it's our spouse, a parent, a sibling, and we look to them like the excuse of, well, you didn't tell me, I didn't have the right mentor, I didn't know, it's your fault, all these things that we start to tell ourselves. And so what happened for me is I had to learn about forgiveness. And it was forgiving myself, not to just be free and to say, you owned your life.
Say that again. Say that again one more time. Forgiving who? Yourself.
You have to forgive yourself because so many times we put ourselves on these, just in this hole. We put ourselves in this corner and say, well, you can't do it because you didn't have this or because you didn't learn this, right? Today, especially, you have so much access to everything. And so for me, it was about forgiving myself to forgive the other people in my life from the things that I thought, well, it's your fault, right? I don't hold grudges, but I held ideas in my mind. I held beliefs about things that I thought. And so I had to really just forgive all of that and say, you know what? People show up as they are. They can only do what they can do at the time and the tools that they're given at that time in their life.
I love that because I went through that. And I think when I want the audience to hear this is that this is Melahni saying that she had to forgive herself. And there's one thing that keeps us just from growing or moving forward, progressing just in life is you have shame and guilt from mistakes that you've made in the past. And just know that we've all made mistakes, right? Everybody has fallen short of the mark. But I want you to know that you're already forgiven. So you need to forgive yourself. And the moment you forgive yourself, it's so liberating because it's like, I want you to imagine this. Imagine you don't even realize, but your whole life, you're carrying unforgiveness. And what that unforgiveness feels like is an 80-pound bag of potatoes that you lug with yourself everywhere you go. And the moment you forgive yourself, like Melahni said, and you truly just say, I'm Daniel, right? So what I did myself, I said, Daniel, I forgive you for being a terrible husband at some point in your life. I forgive you for being, a bad leader. And when you truly say, I forgive you and I release you, it just, that 80-pound bag of potatoes just elevates and just really sets you free.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about that moment when, take us there, because I want to focus on this, because I think too many people, especially right now, since we're in this quarantine and a lot of raw emotions are coming up in people right now. Just kind of walk us through what you did to forgive yourself, because I think a lot of people need that guidance right now, because a lot of junk's coming up in people's lives right now, and I would really see what can you tell us about that, Melahni?
Well, for me, it goes back to, being an only child and having my mom struggling through being young, right, and just making mistakes that she made after my father died. And always thinking like I didn't fit in, even though I was playing hockey, like she did everything for me. But as a kid, your perspective is why didn't I have more? Why didn't I have enough? Why wasn't I connected? Right? What was the gap? I felt like I'm adding value. Why can't people around me see how to help me and bring me up and give me more opportunities? Right? I was always thinking it's somebody else's responsibility. And so I held that, for other people. I held that in their corner. And I thought, that's not their responsibility. It's mine. It's my life. Like, I didn't come from the story of people said, oh, you have to go to this college. I interviewed somebody a few weeks ago, and she said, her parents had her believing that she had to marry at a certain level of culture. And she had to have everything materialistic, and she had to have the kids, and she had to have, the money and the big house and the business. And at 32, she just walked away from it all because it wasn't her dream. And so for me, it wasn't that it wasn't my dream. It was, I was so like filled with joy and what I thought I wanted to do, but I felt like I didn't have the connections. I had expectations for other people to show up in my life.
So if you don't mind sharing with us, what is it that you had to forgive yourself for?
The expectations of expecting other people to show up differently. That's what I had to forgive myself for, because it wasn't about them doing anything. It was about me.
Wow.
About me and how I saw things. And it was really transformational, because I realized how much joy I had been missing out on because of my own beliefs of expectations.
So what I hear you saying is that you felt, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say you felt like society owed you something. Somebody owed you something. Is that what I hear?
In a sense, I mean, I didn't show up like that, but inside I felt like that. Right? But it was always that smiling and being happy and trying to achieve in my own sense to try to replace that feeling. And so I just learned, like, let that go. If people are going to show up as they are, they can give you what they can, and you need to show up as you are. And so that it was just, I know it sounds really simple and it's kind of like, what? That's not really a problem. But for you.
No, it is. I think it's a huge problem right now in our country, just in the world, that everybody feels like they're owed something. You owe me this, you owe me that. It's that instant gratification syndrome, I call it, right? You want everything.
Like, why did this happen to me, right? Why did this happen to me? Why did I lose my job? Why was I shoved out of this? Why don't I fit into this group? Why can't somebody understand how I feel? And that is a lot of it. But when you're going through it, we talk about the middle is messy.
Yeah.
And so you can't understand it when you're in the middle of it. But when you just say, I can only show up as I am, and other people can only show up as they are. They can only show up at that capacity. They only have the capacity of what they know today. So you cannot expect anything different. You just have to say, I can do the best that I can today. I'm going to show up 100%. I'm going to get up and be consistent. And over time, that will pay off. And it has for me every single time I've started something. It has paid off tenfold.
And I love that, because it's a instant way to increase your capacity. And I want the audience to know this is the moment you forgive yourself, or whoever you have unforgiveness towards, right? We'll just say yourself in this case because Melanie said that. But the moment you forgive yourself, is that unforgiveness, underneath that first layer of unforgiveness, that's the root problem for resentment, bitterness, jealousy, and envy are all just secondary a result of of unforgiveness being the root cause. Mm-hmm. So let me say it again. When you carry unforgiveness for yourself or for anybody else, that unforgiveness becomes envy, jealousy, bitterness, and you're not able to celebrate other people because you harbor that unforgiveness. And the reality is, a lot of times we don't even realize that we carry this. Mm-hmm. So I want to encourage you right now, as you're listening to this podcast, this show, ask yourself, is there somebody I need to forgive? Is there somebody that I need to forgive? Do I need to forgive myself for anything? Because the quality of the questions you ask yourself is going to determine the quality of your life. And I want my audience to really know that there really is freedom and another level of life out there. So, wow, Melanie, first of all, Melanie, I want to thank you for playing all in today. I love this because we've never had this type of conversation, me and you, and I've learned so much about you today on the show, and it's just, I feel like I know you even longer, right? I thought I knew you, and it's just amazing how much we learn about somebody else. So if somebody wants to get a hold of Melahni Ake, how can they get a hold of you? And tell us, where can they find you and learn more about this Everyday Leaders and 50 and 50? Please share that with us.
Go to my website, everydayleaders.com, and you can connect to me through YouTube. I've got links on there for YouTube and LinkedIn. You can email me, contact me through that website. My name, Melahni Ake, is make. It's make, right? So it's make it happen. Make at everydayleaders.com is my email address. But I love to connect to people. I have the personal growth lives that I do. When people are my guest on my podcast, it's not about, saying I have a story. It's about connecting to me for your life, because I love to celebrate people. When I learned about forgiveness, I learned that it is about investing in other people and showing up and adding value. So to me, anything that I can do to show up and add value and promote and celebrate people is what I live for every single day. So I love to celebrate people that are doing great things, that are showing up every day consistently to be leaders in their life. And that's what my campaign is about.
Awesome. So I like to do this, right? So do me a favor. I want you to end your part of the show with a quote. Tell us one of your favorite quotes, if you don't mind.
First one from Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right? So that's one of them. But the other one is from John Maxwell, because this one's in my heart all the time. And it's that you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
Yes. Wow. You know what, Melanie, you've been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. You got so much going on, and I really want to thank you. And audience, look her up. She's an amazing woman. She inspires me, and she's the one that inspired me to just do so many of the things that I'm doing. So thank you for joining us today on this show. Melanie, once again, thank you so much. Until next time, till we see you again.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. This was really great. I love you. This is fun.
Well, it's an honor to have you. Thank you so much.
This is Daniel Gomez, and thank you so much for tuning into our show today. We'd love your feedback. Please drop us a comment, and thank you for leaving us a review. Don't forget to subscribe to our show and share this episode with a friend. And my free gift for listening to our show today is a copy of my best-selling book, You Were Born to Fly. To get your free copy, go to DanielGomezInspires.com and get your copy today. That's DanielGomezInspires.com. And to elevate your life and business even more, follow me on social media at Daniel Gomez Inspires on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Together, we will discover the key that unlocks your confidence.